Member for Oshawa.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I'm very pleased to be able to continue my remarks from yesterday. I was glad to have about 45 minutes head start, I guess, to lead into today's comments on Bill 32, which is the Access to Natural Gas Act. So, Speaker, I'm going to remind folks of a few of the pieces that I brought up yesterday, and hopefully I can encourage and inspire the government to answer some of the important questions that we have on this bill. So this is a bill that will expand access to natural gas. That is what it purports to do. That is the framework enabling legislation that we have here. But it's a framework long overdue. We have needed access to affordable energy across this province, especially in our rural regions, especially in our northern communities, especially with our Indigenous communities. But as we see in this bill, we're left to assume that is indeed the goal. And, you know, they say lots of things about assuming. What I would feel better about is if in this actual bill it were in black and white, if it was actually in writing in this bill, that the priority was expansion for our rural communities, for our remote communities, our northern communities, and our Indigenous communities. So hopefully this government can make that change, make that amendment in the committee time. So I'm going to go back. I'm not going to reread the letters that I've already put on the record from farmers, from communities, from families, who through the years have tried to be a part of the natural gas world and that framework. It has been prohibitively expensive for them to get into that. And then, unfortunately, because they can't buy in, they couldn't afford the cost to have the natural gas, to tap into the existing lines, then they're left paying higher costs of energy ongoing. So this is supposed to change all of that. But we have some concerns, not just because we're the opposition, but because we're looking at a landscape here with giving potentially unfettered access to natural gas companies, to the ratepayers' pockets. So as I said yesterday, I mentioned it a couple of times, the government has sold this particular program as a no-cost solution, as a cost savings, because they have axed a $100 million grant that had been promised by the Liberal government, that there were projects that were already being arranged as part of that $100 million grant, and this government said, no, that's taxpayer money. We're going to save the taxpayer. We are going to get rid of this $100 million government investment. We don't want any skin in this game, Speaker. But instead, we are going to say that all of these projects, and then more on top of that, which, okay, as long as there's benefit and they're necessary projects and there's OEB scrutiny on those proposals, on those projects, there's going to be a significant cost to put those lines in. There's going to be significant cost, but this government says not for the taxpayer. Don't worry, folks, we're saving you money, no cost to the taxpayer. But the cost, as is laid out in this legislation, is going to be shifted. There's going to be the subsidy for the new consumers, and that it's going to be shifted to other consumers, yet to be determined in regulation by Cabinet. Cross your fingers. Okay? So that shifted cost responsibility will go on to, we assume, the ratepayer base, onto the existing ratepayers. So we're not calling them taxpayers because that's what this government has said. They're not taxpayers, but they are ratepayers. And I'm going to tell you something, Speaker. It's the same person. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the Ontario Energy Board, or the OEB. They have a duty to respect the consumer. So yesterday I briefly mentioned the core principles. They have to determine whether it's worth it. They have to look at benefits. They look at the potential, and they have to make sure that a project that comes to them, an energy project, is worthwhile, and they have measures. And something about natural gas that I've learned, Speaker, in preparing for this hour lead, natural gas companies aren't actually allowed to make money off of the commodity. Okay, so they can't make money off of natural gas. They make money off of building and managing pipes, and I understand they need to make money. This is a business, but as I hear over and over from farmers and families and businesses, they also provide access to growth and lower costs. Farmers, our agricultural communities, our industries, our families, they need that. They need lower cost energy. They also need broadband. Just asking while everybody's here. Okay, hopefully we'll get to that and we'll have really fulsome debate about broadband another day. But the OEB is the independent regulator. They scrutinize and regulate. So I'm sure that natural gas companies would love to build pipes to everyone, to everywhere, and increase the use of natural gas, but that doesn't make economic sense. These projects need to make sense, be in the best interests of our communities, in the best interests of our businesses and our families. So back to the core principles for the OEB. One, you can't charge different amounts to different classes. I'll come back to that. And the other one is you can't expand if it doesn't benefit existing consumers. So that has been a measure for new projects. That is everybody benefiting equally? No, it's not going to go ahead. I'm oversimplifying, but this is the gist of it. And that everyone has to pay the same because it's not fair if someone has to pay more. Well, I think we all recognize that in some of our rural and our northern and remote communities, it is going to cost more. And if they need it and they are demanding it and they are asking for it and have been for years and years and years, and they're willing to pay more and there's a way to work with them, then by all means, I don't think that we should hamper their growth, their development, and so that's why actually in 2016 the Liberals had decided that rule number 1 isn't fair. That, as I said, if a community or a family is willing to pay the difference to pay more to have it, then case by case we should be able to override this principle. Okay. The bill that we have here, Bill 32, overturns the OEB rules that were based on the principle that people who benefit from natural gas investments should be the ones who pay for them. So this is shifting the cost to the existing ratepayer base. So that overrides rule number 2. I'm not even arguing that that's a problem, but I'm saying when we're getting into territory here that is overriding the OEB, and we have a bill that doesn't explicitly state and reassure us as to what the OEB's role is going to be with all of these new projects, we have concern. We want to know that the OEB will be able to scrutinize these decisions, that projects that are proposed and that hopefully are able to go forward do indeed meet some cost-benefit threshold. And I don't want to leave that up to Cabinet, no offense. I want to leave that up to an independent body to make the decision. So currently we have limits, and we want assurances that we still will, because despite the fact we've heard this is a no-cost solution, there is a cost. As the minister had said the other day, with the $100 million grant that they have cut, but that $100 million was only going to cover, as he said, 12 projects. I don't know. I don't know what those projects are, so I'm using his numbers. So then, as I'll ask again, if $100 million gets you 12 projects, and this government has been talking about 80 projects on the horizon, that quick math looks like about $700 million right out the gate that we have on the table here. So what will that look like? How quickly will that happen? Are we talking about those numbers? Are they legit? During questions and comments, I would love to have clarity on what that cost will be and borne by whom. It says a class of consumers. So I can assume it's the entire natural gas ratepayer base of Ontario, and that those costs, spread over the entire province. I don't know what that will look like on a bill. Maybe significant, maybe, maybe not, arguably not, I don't know. But are we talking about this over the next couple of years, or the next 10, the next 20? We don't know, and we want protections for Ontarians. So again, it's not clear whether the OEB will still have authority to review and approve natural gas expansion proposals. We want to know that. We want to strengthen rural energy infrastructure, but this bill cuts $100 million to the natural gas expansion grant. Just gone. The government is not putting any money in, so they're saying, what? What does that mean? Because to me, they're saying, we're washing our hands of this, we're just going to leave it up to the private sector and cross our fingers that it goes well, which, Speaker, perhaps you remember, that was a great Liberal idea when it came to Hydro One, when it came to, energy. Just, let them look after it. We're still feeling that. So, I caution the government. Do you want to take all of your responsibility out of this conversation? I don't think so. Because if this doesn't go well, you'll wear it regardless. But there are other pieces that I didn't have a chance to talk about yesterday. Speaker, you might remember that Greenpeace recently sued this government for failing to post Bill 4, which was the Cap and Trade Cancellation Act, to the Environmental Registry. Okay, why am I mentioning that? Well, because, and maybe they can clarify, because when I had prepared these remarks last week, when I thought I'd be doing the lead, at that point, this government hadn't posted this bill to the Environmental Registry as required by law. And so if that has since been done since last week, please let me know. But otherwise, why are we going down the same path? We do have environmental responsibilities, and laying pipe across the province falls under this. So again, something that I have I'd say I've belabored this point, but I'm hoping that by the 100th time I say it, that one of them will hear it, that there is no mention of the word rural or northern. So what is the goal? Because if the goal is to subsidize suburban sprawl for, for the benefit of developers to have that discounted natural gas installation, that's funded by the ratepayer, then let's have that conversation. We're all for responsible development, but I don't know that this is the way to approach that. So if this is indeed, like we're hearing in debate, for the folks who've been asking for it, for the rural, remote, northern, and Indigenous communities, great, put that in the bill, please. So I'd like to know who the actual beneficiaries of Bill 32 are. So, as I said, this can't be a maybe for northern and rural. Another assurance while we're talking about those communities, which is nice because often we don't, some northern industries and municipalities have sought assurances that the Northern Industrial Electricity Rate Program will continue. That's $120 million a year in funding. It was reaffirmed in the 2018-2019 budget. There's always a fear it will be cut. This would be a great opportunity for government members to stand up and say, don't worry, Jen, you can reassure all of those industries and municipalities that it's still a go. So, food for thought. Anyway, one other thing, Speaker, in the spirit of working together, I had requested a briefing on this particular bill. Haven't had it yet. Maybe I won't, but anyway, I figured it out myself, and the one thing the government did give me was a handy consolidation of acts, the Ontario Energy Board Act, and this is just a fun fact as I was flipping through here, and I can't show you because that would make it a prop, but this is where this amendment will fit in here, okay? What we're debating fits neatly in here, but when you flip through the Act, you find gray areas, like actually colored gray, okay? I'm being literal here. And these are sections of the bill that we have already debated in this House that have passed, but haven't actually been proclaimed yet. And there's a whack of them. And one of them, so the government might want to take a look at this when it comes to stopping the distribution of gas, recovery of amounts, exceptions. And there are some protections in here for consumers, for natural gas consumers, in the event of, well, reading into it, winter disconnections, for example. So protections for consumers that it's in law, but it hasn't been proclaimed yet. So while you're at it, while you're digging in here and you're putting in these amendments and we're talking about it in committee, seeing as how you're the new government, maybe go back and proclaim some of these protections just for fun and while we're here. So the takeaway in my last minute and a half, you know, the government is cutting a $100 million investment, a $100 million grant. They have no skin in the game, and they're putting all of this on private industry and, you know, calling no longer the taxpayer is on the hook for this, but the ratepayer is, and pretending that those are different people. Come on. An Ontarian is an Ontarian, and the cost will be borne by them. So let's do this responsibly and reassure folks that this will be something that does ultimately lead to the goal that you're talking about, and it's not in writing, but that is to have affordable access, affordable energy access to our rural and remote and northern and Indigenous communities. So that needs to be the priority. Please put it in writing. The potentially unfettered access to ratepayer pockets, we want to know, we want to hear from this government that the OEB will be involved, what that will look like, can they scrutinize it, what is their place in this, because it can't just all be up to Cabinet. Like I said, I like you, but, okay, we need the independent we need independent oversight on this. We really want the government to prioritize the needs of our ag sector, of our rural communities, our northern neighbours. Prove it, use the words, type them. They're not too long. Put them in the bill. But you know, we've seen an unpredictable and unstable way of doing business with cancelling contracts. We want to know that this is the right way forward, so we're asking this government to prove that to us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.